What's the occasion?
What if I told you I'm meeting two of my exes tonight?
What would you do if I said you're not? I know everything.
I came home early that Friday, expecting to find Kara sprawled on the couch with her usual glass of wine and some reality TV garbage. Instead, I found her in our bedroom, slipping into a dress that left absolutely nothing to the imagination. The black fabric was so sheer it might as well have been plastic wrap, and she wasn't wearing a damn thing underneath. "What's the occasion?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Victoria's Secret convention?" Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. She turned to face me, and I could see the challenge in her eyes. That look I'd grown to hate over the past few months, the one that said she thought I was too weak, too stupid, too wrapped up in my construction business to notice what was really going on. "What if I told you I'm meeting two of my exes tonight?" she said, running her hands down the dress that barely covered her thighs. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not surprise. I'd been expecting this moment for weeks. Just a calm, calculating coldness that I'd learned to embrace during my years building Harper Construction from nothing. "What would you do if I said you're not?" I replied, pulling out my phone. She laughed. Actually laughed. "Right, Nick. What are you going to do? Ground me?" I hit the number I'd already programmed into my contacts 3 days ago, when I'd first discovered her little plan through her iCloud messages that she'd stupidly synced to our shared iPad. "Ritz Carlton, this is Jennifer. How may I help you?" "Hi, Jennifer. I need to cancel a reservation. Room 447, under the name Sarah Mitchell." Kara's face went white. Sarah Mitchell was her college roommate's name, the alias she'd been using for her extracurricular activities. "Certainly, sir. May I ask who's calling?" "Nick Harper. I'm Sarah's husband, and there's been a family emergency." "Of course, Mr. Harper. The reservation for tonight has been canceled. Is there anything else I can help you with?" "Actually, yes. Could you confirm the other 2 reservations that were linked to that room? I need to contact those gentlemen about the change in plans." I watched Kara sink onto our bed as the hotel clerk rattled off the names I already knew: Ethan Brooks and Derek Lynn. Her 2 precious exes who thought they were getting a threesome with a married woman whose husband was too dumb to catch on. "Thank you, Jennifer. You've been very helpful." I ended the call and reached into my jacket pocket, pulling out a manila envelope I'd prepared that morning. "Divorce papers," I said, tossing it onto the bed next to her. "Along with screenshots of every text message, every email, and every photo you've sent to Ethan and Derek over the past 2 months. Oh, and there's a recording of a conversation you had with Megan last week about how you were planning to give them both the night of their lives while your boring husband was out of town on business." Her phone started buzzing, then ringing, then buzzing again. "That would be Becca Brooks and Linda Lynn," I said, checking my watch. "Ethan and Derek's wives. I sent them copies of everything about 20 minutes ago, right before I called the hotel." Kara grabbed her phone with shaking hands. 17 missed calls, 43 text messages, and they were still coming. "You bastard," she whispered. "No, sweetheart. I'm just a guy who pays attention. Unlike your 2 boyfriends, who apparently never mentioned to you that they're both married to women who make more money than they do. Becca's a divorce attorney, by the way. Linda runs a tech company. They're not going to take this well." Her phone rang again. This time it was Ethan. She answered it on speaker, probably hoping to salvage something from the wreckage. "What the hell did you do?" Ethan's voice was panicked, almost shrieking. "My wife is here with a lawyer and she's talking about taking the house, the kids, everything. She has photos, Kara, photos of us." "I didn't—" "Derek's wife called her. They know about tonight, they know about the hotel, they know about all of it." The line went ended. Immediately, her phone rang again. Derek this time. "My wife just froze all our accounts. She's talking to reporters about my company. Do you have any idea what you've done?" I walked over and took the phone from her hands, ending the call. Change clothes, I said. You look desperate. Oh, wait, you are. I headed for the door, then turned back one more time. By the way, I had the locks changed this morning. Your key won't work anymore. I'll have Rick drop your stuff off at Megan's place tomorrow. Assuming she's still talking to you after her husband finds out she's been covering for your affairs. I left her sitting there in that see-through dress, her whole carefully constructed world of lies collapsing around her like a house of cards in a hurricane. 3 weeks earlier, I'd been just another trusting husband. Sure, Kara had been distant lately, working late, taking mysterious phone calls that she'd end the moment I walked into the room. But I'd been busy too, expanding Harper construction into commercial projects, dealing with permits and contractors, and the 1,000 daily crises that come with running your own business. The wake-up call came on a Tuesday night when I couldn't sleep and decided to check the weather on our shared iPad. That's when I saw them. Dozens of messages from Kara's iCloud account that she'd forgotten to turn off on the tablet. Can't wait to feel you inside me again. She'd written to someone named Ethan. It's been too long. Derek's so much better than Nick, she'd told someone called Megan. He actually knows how to make a woman feel alive. We should do them both at the same time, Megan had replied. You deserve to have some fun. I sat in my kitchen at 2 a.m, reading months of messages that painted a picture of a woman who'd been playing me for a fool while planning elaborate, intimate adventures with 2 men from her past. The worst part wasn't even the cheating, it was the contempt, the way she talked about me like I was some pathetic loser who deserved to be betrayed. Nick's so predictable, she'd written. Work, beer, bed. He has no idea how to satisfy a real woman. Just don't get caught, Megan had warned her. Men like Nick can get violent when their egos are bruised. That's when I'd started planning. The next morning, I called Anita Parsons, a former police detective who'd gone private after 25 years on the force. I'd used her services before to run background checks on potential employees, and I knew she was thorough, discreet, and completely without sentiment when it came to cheating spouses. I need everything, I told her over coffee at Mickey's Diner, the kind of place where construction workers and cops grab breakfast before dawn. Phone records, credit card statements, hotel receipts. I want to know every lie she's told and every place she's been. Anita was a small woman in her 50s, with gray hair and the kind of eyes that had seen everything twice. She listened to my story without judgment, taking notes in a small leather notebook. How far do you want to take this, Nick? As far as it takes. I want her to understand that actions have consequences. I want everyone who helped her or covered for her to understand that too. What about the men? I thought about that for a moment. Ethan Brooks was a real estate agent who specialized in luxury homes, the kind of guy who wore expensive suits and drove a Porsche, but probably couldn't change a tire if his life depended on it. Derek Lynn ran some kind of tech startup and posted constantly on social media about his success and his perfect family. They're both married. Happily, from what I can tell. Kids, mortgages, the whole suburban dream. Then their wives deserve to know what kind of men they married. After that, it's up to them what they want to do about it. Anita smiled for the first time since we'd sat down. I like you, Nick. Most men in your situation want me to find evidence so they can forgive and forget. You want justice. I want the truth to have consequences. Over the next 2 weeks, Anita worked her magic while I played the oblivious husband. I went to work every day, came home to Kara's increasingly elaborate lies about working late and girls' nights out, and quietly documented everything. Rick Soto, my foreman, was the only person I told about what was happening. Rick was 28, built like a linebacker, and had grown up in neighborhoods where cheating wives and lying friends were handled with swift, decisive action. You want me to have a talk with these guys? He asked when I showed him some of the messages. Not yet, but I might need your help with something else. Whatever you need, boss. This is messed up. The plan came together like a construction project, carefully, methodically, with attention to every detail that could go wrong. Anita confirmed that Ethan and Derek had no idea about each other, which meant Kara was playing all three of us. She also discovered that both men had been having other affairs, which gave me additional leverage with their wives. Ethan's been seeing a college student on the side, Anita reported. Derek's got a thing going with his business partner's wife. These aren't good guys, Nick. Good. That makes this easier. The Friday night setup was perfect. Kara thought I was supposed to be in Hartford overnight for a commercial bid. She'd planned her little threesome for that evening, with Megan providing alibis and transportation. They'd booked the hotel room under a fake name and arranged to meet the men separately so no one would see them together. What they hadn't counted on was me coming home early, or the fact that I'd been reading every message they'd sent for weeks. When I walked into that bedroom and saw Kara in that dress, I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. The trap was set. All I had to do was spring it. The town's annual harvest festival was the perfect place for the next phase of my plan. Main Street was blocked off, vendors lined the sidewalks, and half the town was wandering around eating funnel cake and gossiping about their neighbors. It was exactly the kind of public setting where reputations could be destroyed with surgical precision. I arrived around noon on Saturday, less than 24 hours after I'd left Kara sitting in ruins in our bedroom. Word travels fast in a town like ours, and I could already see the looks, hear the whispered conversations that stopped when I walked by. "There's Nick Harper," I heard Mrs. Doyle tell her bridge club friends. "Poor man. Did you hear what his wife was planning to do?" I'd counted on that. Mrs. Doyle lived next door to us and had been watching Kara's comings and goings for months. When Anita had visited her yesterday morning with a few carefully chosen details about Kara's activities, the old woman had been more than happy to share what she'd observed. "Strange men coming and going at all hours," Mrs. Doyle had told half the neighborhood by now. "And that Megan Carter, always sneaking around, helping with Lord knows what." I bought a coffee and a fried dough, playing the part of a man trying to keep his dignity intact while his world fell apart. The sympathy was exactly what I'd hoped for. In a town full of working families and traditional values, a cheating wife was about as popular as a tax increase. That's when I saw them. Kara was standing near the craft booths, wearing jeans and a sweater that covered everything the dress from last night had revealed. She was talking to Megan, both of them looking like they'd rather be anywhere else on Earth. Megan kept glancing around nervously, probably wondering how many people knew about her role in Kara's affairs. But the real entertainment was happening near the beer tent. Ethan Brooks was there with his wife Becca, and they were having what looked like a very tense conversation. Becca was a tall, sharp-featured woman who'd built a successful law practice on the premise that cheating husbands deserved to lose everything. She was holding a manila envelope, probably the same evidence packet I'd sent her yesterday, and Ethan looked like he was about to throw up. Derek Lynn was 20 feet away with his wife Linda, and their conversation looked even worse. Linda was a successful tech entrepreneur, the kind of woman who'd built her company from nothing and didn't tolerate weakness or betrayal. She was speaking in low, controlled tones while Derek nodded frantically, sweat visible on his forehead despite the cool October air. I decided it was time to make my presence known. "Kara," I called out, walking over to where she stood with Megan. "Didn't expect to see you here." She turned, and I could see the fear in her eyes. Good. She should be afraid. "Nick, we need to talk." "Do we? I thought we covered everything last night. Unless you want to discuss the divorce settlement in public, I'm sure folks would find that interesting." Megan stepped forward, trying to play the protective friend. "Nick, you're being cruel. Kara made a mistake, but—" "A mistake?" I laughed, loud enough for people nearby to hear. "Planning to sleep with 2 married men while I was out of town wasn't a mistake, Megan. It was a choice, just like your choice to help her do it." Megan's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. You were going to drive her to the hotel. You helped her pick out that see-through dress. You've been covering for her affairs for months. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. I have the messages, Megan. All of them. That's when Ethan decided to make his move. He walked over from the beer tent, probably thinking he could intimidate me into keeping quiet. He was about 6 feet tall, well-dressed in the kind of casual, expensive clothes that were supposed to communicate success. What he didn't know was that I'd spent 20 years working construction, dealing with men who thought they were tougher than they actually were. "Harper," he said, trying to sound authoritative. "We need to settle this like men." "Settle what exactly?" I asked. "The fact that you were planning to sleep with my wife? Or the fact that your wife is probably going to take you for everything you own?" "You had no right to involve Becca in this." "Actually, I had every right. She's married to a cheating piece of garbage. She deserves to know what kind of man she's been supporting all these years." Ethan stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his expensive cologne. "You think you're smart, don't you? Blue-collar hero, standing up for himself, but you have no idea who you're messing with." That's when I decided to give him a little demonstration of exactly who he was messing with. I stepped back, pretending to be intimidated, and accidentally bumped into the funnel cake vendor's table. The whole thing tipped over, sending hot oil and batter flying directly onto Ethan's designer polo shirt and khaki pants. "Oh God, I'm so sorry," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm so clumsy. Here, let me help you clean that up." I grabbed a handful of napkins and started dabbing at his shirt, which only made the stains worse. Ethan was hopping around, trying to get away from me, hot oil soaking through his clothes. The crowd that had gathered was trying not to laugh, but I could see the smiles. "You did that on purpose," he hissed. "Did what?" "I told you I was sorry. Accidents happen, right? Kind of like how you accidentally planned to sleep with my wife." Derek had wandered over by now, probably drawn by the commotion. He took one look at Ethan covered in funnel cake batter and seemed to realize that his own situation was just as precarious. "This is insane," Derek said. "We're all adults here. We can work this out." "Can we?" I asked. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you two thought you could screw around with other people's wives and never face any consequences. How's that working out for you?" I gestured toward the beer tent, where both of their wives were watching the scene unfold. Becca Brooks looked like a shark who'd smelled blood in the water. Linda Lynn looked like she was calculating exactly how much Derek's betrayal was going to cost him. "You destroyed our lives," Ethan said, still trying to wipe batter off his shirt. "No," I replied. "You destroyed your own lives. I just made sure everyone found out about it." That's when Kara finally spoke up. "Nick, please, can't we handle this privately?" "Privately?" I turned to look at her, letting all the anger I'd been controlling show in my voice. "You mean like how you privately planned to cheat on me? Like how you privately told your friends that I was boring and predictable? Like how you privately arranged to humiliate me while I was working to support us?" The crowd was listening now, not even pretending to look away. This was better than any soap opera, and everyone knew it. "You want privacy, Kara? You should have thought about that before you decided to broadcast your affairs to half the town. You should have thought about it before you involved Megan in your schemes. You should have thought about it before you put on that dress last night and planned to give 2 married men the night of their lives." Megan grabbed Kara's arm. "We should go." "Good idea," I said. "But you might want to hurry. I heard Tom Carter was asking questions about where you've been spending your evenings. Apparently someone told him about your role in all this." Megan went white. Tom Carter was her husband, a mechanic who worked on my construction equipment. He was a good man, the kind who believed in loyalty and honesty. Learning that his wife had been helping another woman cheat would not go over well. As Kara and Megan hurried away, I turned back to Ethan and Derek. They were both standing there looking like they'd rather disappear into the ground. "Gentlemen," I said, "I'd suggest you go talk to your wives. From the looks of things, you've got some serious damage control to do. And next time you want to sleep with someone else's wife, Maybe make sure her husband isn't smarter than you think he is. I walked away, leaving them standing there covered in funnel cake batter and facing the ruins of their marriages. The crowd was already starting to disperse, but I knew the story would be all over town by evening. Phase 2 was complete, but I was just getting started. That night, I was working late at the construction site, going over blueprints for a new commercial project, when I heard a car pull up outside. Through the trailer window, I could see headlights cutting through the darkness, and I had a pretty good idea who it was. Rick was with me, helping to inventory equipment for Monday's job. When we heard footsteps crunching across the gravel lot, he looked at me and grinned. Think it's one of your wife's boyfriends coming to have a man-to-man talk? Probably. Should be entertaining. We watched through the window as Ethan Brooks crept around the construction site, clearly looking for something he could use against me. He was dressed in dark clothes, probably thinking he was being stealthy, but he moved like a man who'd never done a day of manual labor in his life. "What do you think he's looking for?" Rick asked. Probably hoping to find something he can use to make me look bad. Maybe evidence that I'm running an unsafe operation, or not paying taxes, or something he can use to get back at me. Should we call the cops? Not yet. Let's see how far he wants to take this. We watched Ethan poke around the equipment, trying doors on the storage containers, even attempting to get into my office trailer. When he started trying to jimmy the lock with what looked like a credit card, I decided it was time to make our presence known. Rick and I slipped out the back door of the trailer and circled around behind him. The construction site at night was our territory. We knew every piece of equipment, every pile of materials, every shadow. Ethan was stumbling around like a tourist in a foreign country. "Looking for something?" I asked, stepping out of the darkness behind him. Ethan spun around, nearly falling over a stack of concrete blocks. In the harsh light from the security floods, I could see the fear on his face. I was just what? Breaking into my property? Going through my equipment? Planning to vandalize something?" Rick emerged from the other side, carrying a crowbar he'd grabbed from the tool shed. He wasn't planning to use it, but Ethan didn't know that. In the shadows, Rick looked like exactly what he was, a man who'd grown up in neighborhoods where problems were settled with direct action. "I wasn't breaking in," Ethan said, his voice shaking. "I was just looking around." At 11 o'clock at night, on private property, with what looked like burglary tools? I walked closer, close enough that Ethan had to back up against the trailer. The metal door slammed shut behind him with a bang that echoed across the construction site. "Here's what I think happened," I said, my voice calm and conversational. "I think you're pissed off that your wife is taking you to the cleaners. I think you're looking for some way to get back at me. Maybe find something you can use to make me look bad. Maybe you thought you could plant something here, or steal something, or just mess with my equipment. That's not... But here's what you didn't think about, Ethan. This is my world. I've been working construction for 20 years. I know every contractor, every inspector, every cop who works this beat. You're a real estate agent who sells overpriced houses to people with more money than sense. You're out of your league." Rick stepped closer, the crowbar still in his hand. "Boss, you want me to call this in? Trespassing, attempted burglary, maybe criminal mischief?" "Not yet, Rick. I think Mr. Brooks just needs to understand the situation better." I reached into my pocket and pulled out Ethan's phone, which he'd dropped when we'd surprised him. "Oops," I said, walking over to the cement mixer we'd been using for foundation work. "Butterfingers!" I tossed the phone into the mixer, where it disappeared into several hundred pounds of wet concrete. "My phone!" Ethan lunged toward the mixer, but Rick blocked his path. "Careful there, buddy. That mixer's dangerous. Wouldn't want you to have an accident. You can't do this. That's destruction of property." "What property?" I asked. "I don't see any property. Do you see any property, Rick?" "Nope. Just a guy trespassing on a construction site at night acting suspicious." Ethan looked back and forth between us, finally starting to understand that he'd made a serious mistake. "Look," he said. Maybe we can work something out. I'll pay for the damages to your marriage, compensate you for… Compensate me? I stepped closer, close enough that he could smell the sawdust and concrete dust on my clothes. You think this is about money? You think you can write me a check and make this go away? What do you want? I want you to understand something, Ethan. I want you to understand that actions have consequences. You thought you could sleep with my wife and never have to face me. You thought I was just some dumb construction worker who'd never figure it out. You thought wrong. I grabbed him by the shirt and pressed him against the trailer door, not hard enough to hurt him, but hard enough to make it clear who was in control. If you ever come near my house, my business, or anyone in my family again, the next thing you lose won't be your phone. It'll be your dignity, your reputation, and whatever's left of your pathetic little life. Do we understand each other? Ethan nodded frantically. Good. Now get off my property before I decide to let Rick here explain the situation to you in his own way. Rick cracked his knuckles and smiled. Ethan practically ran to his car. As we watched his taillights disappear down the road, Rick shook his head. These rich boys got no idea how the real world works. No, they don't. But they're about to learn. The next morning, I stopped by Mickey's diner for coffee and found that the story of Kara's planned affair had spread even further than I'd expected. The waitress, a woman named Sally who'd lived in town her whole life, poured my coffee and leaned in conspiratorially. Heard your wife was planning quite a party, she said, with 2 men at once. That true? Sally, I don't really want to talk about… Because if it is, she's got some nerve. My husband cheated on me once, 20 years ago. I made sure he never forgot what a mistake that was. What did you do? Put sugar in his gas tank, told his boss about the drinking problem he thought he was hiding, and made sure every woman in town knew exactly what kind of man he was. He spent 6 months sleeping in his truck before I let him back in the house. Did it work? Hasn't looked at another woman since. Sometimes a man needs to learn that his wife isn't as helpless as he thinks she is. I was starting to realize that Kara's humiliation was spreading beyond anything I'd originally planned. The story was taking on a life of its own, growing and changing with each telling. By the time it had made the rounds of every diner, bar, and beauty shop in town, Kara would be lucky if anyone would even make eye contact with her. That afternoon, Anita called with an update. Thought you'd want to know? Megan Carter's husband filed for divorce this morning. Apparently, someone told him about his wife's role in your situation, and he didn't take it well. How didn't he take it well? Well, let's just say Megan spent last night at a motel, and she's not welcome back at the house until the lawyers sort things out. What about Kara? She's staying with her sister in Hartford. Word is she's trying to find a job there, start over somewhere nobody knows her story. And Ethan and Derek? Derek's wife froze all their assets and moved back in with her parents. She's talking about taking his business in the divorce. Ethan's wife is being a little more strategic. She's letting him think he might be able to save the marriage while her lawyers prepare to take him apart piece by piece. Sounds like justice to me. Nick, there's something else. Kara's been trying to get back at you. She's been calling around town, telling people you threatened her, that you're dangerous, that she's afraid of you. Is anyone buying it? Not really. Most people figure a woman who was planning to cheat with 2 men at once probably isn't the most reliable source of information about her husband's character. That evening, I was having a beer at Flanagan's pub when Tom Carter walked in. Tom was Megan's soon-to-be ex-husband, a decent man who'd been blindsided by his wife's betrayal. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past week. Nick, he said, sitting down at my table. I owe you a drink. You don't owe me anything, Tom. Yeah, I do. If you hadn't exposed what was going on, I'd still be married to a woman who was helping other people cheat. I'd still be trusting someone who was lying to my face every day. He ordered a beer and sat quietly for a moment. 22 years, he said finally. 22 years I was married to Megan, and I never knew she was capable of something like this. I'm sorry, Tom. I never wanted to hurt you. You didn't hurt me, she did. You just made sure I found out about it. We sat in silence for a while, two men whose wives had betrayed them in different ways. Finally, Tom spoke again. What are you going to do now? I'm going to make sure this never happens to anyone else. What do you mean? I mean, I'm going to make sure everyone in town understands exactly what kind of people Kara, Megan, Ethan, and Derek really are. I'm going to make sure their names become synonymous with betrayal and dishonesty. I'm going to make sure that anyone who thinks about cheating on their spouse remembers what happened to them. Tom raised his beer. To justice. To consequences, I replied. We drank to the destruction of four people who'd thought they were smarter than everyone else, and I started planning the final phase of my revenge. 2 weeks later, I was ready to spring the ultimate trap. Kara had been staying with her sister in Hartford, but she'd been making trips back to town to try to salvage something from the wreckage of her life. She'd been telling people that I'd threatened her, that I was dangerous, that she was the real victim in all of this. What she didn't know was that Rick had been recording her conversations with Megan, conversations where they'd discussed framing me for domestic abuse and trying to steal money from my business accounts. Rick had gotten suspicious when Megan had called him, claiming she had information about safety violations at our construction sites. When he'd met with her, he'd kept his phone recording in his pocket. Nick's been abusing Kara for years, Megan had told Rick. She's finally ready to come forward, but she needs evidence that he's been stealing money from the business. If you could help us get into his financial records. She's been planning this for weeks, Rick told me, playing back the recording. She wants to destroy you the same way you destroyed her. Let her try. I've got nothing to hide. But I decided it was time to end this once and for all. I sent a text message to Kara, Megan, Ethan, and Derek, claiming that I wanted to return some of Kara's personal belongings and discuss a settlement that would avoid a messy public divorce trial. Meet me at the Starlight Motel on Route 9, I wrote. Room 12, Thursday at 8 p.m. Come alone, no lawyers, and we can work this out like adults. The Starlight Motel was the kind of place where people went when they didn't want to be seen. It was perfect for what I had in mind. What they didn't know was that I'd invited some other people to the same meeting. At 7:45 p.m., I was sitting in the motel parking lot with Rick and Anita, watching as Kara, Megan, Ethan, and Derek all arrived separately. They looked nervous, probably wondering what I had planned, but they were all there. At exactly 8 p.m., Becca Brooks and Linda Lynn pulled up in Becca's Mercedes. They were followed by Tom Carter, Mrs. Doyle, Big Mike from Flanagan's Pub, and about a dozen other people from town who'd been following the story of Kara's planned affair. You ready for this? Rick asked. I've been ready for this since the night I found those messages. We walked over to room 12, where Kara was knocking on the door. She turned when she saw me approaching with the crowd behind me. What is this, Nick? What are all these people doing here? They're here for the same reason you are, Kara, to settle this once and for all. I opened the motel room door, revealing a room I'd set up with a projector and screen. On the walls, I'd posted blown-up copies of text messages, emails, and photos that documented not just Kara's affairs, but also Megan's role in covering for her, Ethan's other affairs, and Derek's business dealings with his married business partner. Welcome to the truth, I announced to the crowd. Everything you need to know about these four people is right here on these walls. Kara looked around the room in horror. You can't do this. This is private information. Private? Becca Brooks stepped forward, her lawyer's instincts taking over. Nothing about adultery is private, especially when it involves my husband. Linda Lynn was studying the evidence about Derek's affairs. 2 other women besides Kara? Really, Derek? I thought I was married to a cheater, not a serial cheater. That's when Megan made her desperate play. This is all Nick's fault, she announced to the crowd. He set this whole thing up. He's been abusing Kara for years, threatening her, stealing money from his business. We have evidence. She pulled out her phone, probably planning to play some edited recording that would make me look bad. but Rick stepped forward first. "Actually, we have evidence too," he said, pulling out his own phone. "Evidence of you and Kara planning to frame Nick for abuse. Evidence of you trying to get me to help you steal from his business. Evidence of you lying to your husband for months while you helped another woman cheat." He hit play, and Megan's voice filled the room. "Nick's been abusing Kara for years. She's finally ready to come forward, but she needs evidence that he's been stealing money from the business. If you could help us get into his financial records, we could probably get him arrested and take everything he owns." The crowd turned to stare at Megan, who went pale. That's not what I meant. You're taking it out of context. What context makes it okay to frame an innocent man for crimes he didn't commit?" Tom Carter stepped forward, his voice shaking with anger. "What context makes it okay for my wife to help destroy someone else's marriage?" Ethan tried to slip toward the door, but Big Mike blocked his path. Mike was a former bouncer who stood about 6'4" and weighed close to 300 pounds. "Where are you going, Romeo? Party's just getting started." Derek was staring at the evidence on the walls, probably calculating how much his multiple affairs were going to cost him. "This is insane," he said. "We're all adults here. People have affairs. It happens. It doesn't have to destroy everyone's lives." "You're right," Linda said, her voice ice cold. "It doesn't have to destroy everyone's lives, just yours." She handed him a manila envelope. "Divorce papers. I'm taking the business, the house, the cars, and half of everything you've hidden in those offshore accounts you think I don't know about." Becca was having a similar conversation with Ethan. 20 years of marriage, and this is what I get. A husband who cheats with multiple women and plans threesomes while I'm home with our children. "Becca, please, we can work this out." "We are working it out. My way. You'll be hearing from my lawyers tomorrow." The crowd was eating this up. Mrs. Doyle was taking notes, probably planning to share every detail with the entire neighborhood. Big Mike was recording everything on his phone, undoubtedly planning to show it to everyone who came into his bar. But Kara wasn't done fighting. "Fine," she screamed. "You want to destroy my life? You want to turn everyone against me? Go ahead. But don't pretend you're some innocent victim, Nick. You're cold, you're calculating, and you planned this whole thing like some kind of psychopath." "You're right," I said calmly. "I did plan this. I planned it the moment I discovered that my wife was cheating on me with 2 men while telling her friends that I was boring and predictable. I planned it when I realized that you had so little respect for me that you thought I'd never figure it out." I walked closer to her, close enough that she had to look up at me. "But here's the difference between us, Kara. When you planned to cheat, you were planning to hurt an innocent person who loved you. When I planned this, I was planning to expose people who were already hurting others. You destroyed our marriage. I just made sure everyone knew you destroyed it." The room was completely silent. Even Mrs. Doyle had stopped taking notes. "You could have divorced me quietly," Kara said, tears starting to run down her face. "You could have handled this privately. Like you handled your affairs privately? Like you privately told Megan that I didn't know how to satisfy a real woman? Like you privately planned to frame me for abuse when your cheating was exposed?" I turned to address the crowd. "Everyone here needs to understand something. These 4 people didn't just cheat and lie. They planned to destroy innocent people to cover up their own crimes. Megan was willing to help frame me for domestic abuse. Ethan and Derek were willing to break up marriages for intimacy. Kara was willing to steal from my business to fund her new life." "That's not true," Kara protested. Rick held up his phone again. "Want me to play the rest of the recording? The part where you and Megan discussed transferring money out of Nick's business accounts?" Kara's face went white. She'd forgotten about that part of their conversation. The crowd was starting to murmur among themselves. These weren't just affairs anymore. This was fraud, conspiracy, and attempted character assassination. "I think we've heard enough," Becca announced. "Ethan, you'll be served with papers tomorrow. I suggest you find yourself a good lawyer, because I'm going to take you for everything you own." Linda nodded. Derek, you can pick up your clothes from the front porch. Everything else belongs to me now. Tom Carter looked at Megan with disgust. 22 years. 22 years I wasted on you. As the crowd started to file out of the motel room, I heard the whispered conversations that would be all over town by morning. Did you hear what Megan was planning to do to Nick? Trying to frame him for abuse. That's criminal. And Cara was going to steal from his business. Those two men cheating on their wives with multiple women. Disgusting. All of them. Within an hour, the story would be in every bar, diner, and living room in town. By morning, Cara, Megan, Ethan, and Derek would be the most hated people in the county. As the last of the crowd left, I turned to face the four people who'd thought they were smart enough to destroy my life. This is what consequences look like, I said. This is what happens when you think you can hurt innocent people and never pay for it. Cara was crying now, mascara running down her face. Megan was staring at her phone, probably reading text messages from people who'd already heard about the recording. Ethan and Derek looked like they wanted to disappear. "You've destroyed us," Derek said. "No," I replied. "You destroyed yourselves. I just made sure everyone found out about it." I walked toward the door, then turned back one more time. "Oh, and Cara, don't bother coming back to the house. I had the locks changed again." The final confrontation came 3 days later at Flanagan's pub on what should have been our 10th wedding anniversary. I hadn't planned it that way, but sometimes the universe has a sense of timing that's better than anything you could arrange yourself. I was sitting at the bar, having a beer with Rick and Tom Carter, when Cara walked in. She looked like she'd aged 5 years in the past month. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes were wrinkled, and she had the desperate look of someone who'd run out of options. The entire bar went quiet when she walked in. Big Mike stopped wiping glasses. The construction workers at the pool table stopped their game. Even the jukebox seemed to lower its volume. "Nick," she said, walking over to where I sat. "We need to talk." "Do we? I thought we covered everything at the motel." "Please, I'm begging you. I have nowhere to go. No job, no money, no friends. My sister won't let me stay with her anymore. I'm living in my car." I turned to look at her, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "That's what happens when you plan to cheat on your husband, frame him for abuse, and steal from his business, Cara. Actions have consequences. I never meant for it to go this far. The thing with Ethan and Derek, it was just... I was lonely. You were always working, always focused on the business. I felt invisible. So you decided to make me invisible too. You decided to replace me with 2 married men who were just using you for intimacy." The bar was listening to every word. This was better than cable television, and everyone knew it. "I made mistakes," Cara continued. "But so did you. You could have talked to me. You could have tried to save our marriage instead of destroying my entire life." "Save our marriage?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "How do you save a marriage when your wife thinks you're boring and predictable? How do you save a marriage when your wife is planning threesomes with other men? How do you save a marriage when your wife is plotting to steal your money and frame you for crimes you didn't commit?" I was angry. I said things I didn't mean. "No, Cara. You meant every word. You meant it when you told Megan that Derek was better than me. You meant it when you put on that see-through dress and planned to give 2 men the night of their lives. You meant it when you tried to destroy my reputation to cover up your own crimes." Rick leaned over. "Boss, you want me to call someone? Get her out of here?" "No, Rick, let her finish. I want everyone to hear this." Cara looked around the bar, finally realizing that she had an audience, but she was too desperate to care about her dignity anymore. "I'll do anything," she said. "I'll sign any settlement you want. I'll leave town, change my name, disappear. Just give me enough money to start over somewhere else." "Like you gave me a chance to start over when you were planning to destroy my reputation?" Like you gave Becca Brooks and Linda Lynn a chance to start over when you were planning to sleep with their husbands? Like you gave Tom Carter a chance to start over when you got his wife to help you cheat? Tom Carter spoke up from his bar stool. My wife cost me 22 years and half my retirement savings. I don't see why your wife should get a better deal. Big Mike nodded from behind the bar. Woman plans to cheat with 2 men at once, then tries to frame her husband for abuse? That's not a mistake, that's a pattern. Mrs. Doyle, who was sitting in a corner booth with her bridge club, raised her voice. In my day, a woman like that would be run out of town on a rail. Kara looked around the bar, finally understanding that she had no allies left. No one was going to help her. No one was going to give her the benefit of the doubt. She'd burned every bridge, destroyed every relationship, and now she was facing the consequences alone. This isn't fair, she said, her voice breaking. I'm not a bad person. I just made some bad choices. Bad choices? I stood up from my bar stool, and the entire bar fell silent. Let me tell you about bad choices, Kara. A bad choice is forgetting to pay a bill or saying something hurtful in an argument. What you did was plan a systematic betrayal of everyone who trusted you. I walked closer to her, close enough that she had to look up at me. You planned to cheat on me with 2 men at the same time. You recruited your best friend to help you do it. You told people that I was boring and couldn't satisfy you. When you got caught, you tried to frame me for domestic abuse. When that didn't work, you planned to steal money from my business. Those weren't bad choices, Kara. That was a criminal conspiracy. I never actually stole anything. Because I stopped you. Because Rick recorded you planning to do it. Because I was smarter than you thought I was. The bar was so quiet you could hear the ice melting in people's drinks. You want to know what's really unfair, Kara? What's unfair is that I spent 10 years building a life with someone who was planning to destroy me the moment it became convenient. What's unfair is that I trusted you, supported you, and loved you while you were telling your friends that I was inadequate. I loved you too. No, you didn't. You loved what I could provide for you. You loved the house I bought, the lifestyle I gave you, the security I provided. But you never loved me. If you had loved me, you wouldn't have been able to plan what you planned. I reached into my wallet and pulled out a $20 bill, placing it on the bar. This should cover your first meal as a single woman. After that, you're on your own. I turned to walk away, then stopped and faced her one more time. Oh, and Kara? Happy anniversary. The entire bar erupted in laughter and applause as I walked toward the door. Behind me, I could hear Kara sobbing, finally understanding that her old life was over and her new life was going to be very different. Rick caught up with me in the parking lot. Boss, that was brutal. She earned it. What do you think she'll do now? I don't know, and I don't care. That's her problem now. As we drove away from Flanagan's pub, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not happiness, not satisfaction, just peace. The war was over, and I had won. Over the next few weeks, the aftermath played out exactly as I'd expected. Ethan lost his house, his business, and his children in the divorce. Derek's wife took his company and left him with nothing but debt and legal bills. Megan moved to another state, but the story followed her. Tom Carter started dating a nice woman from the next town over, someone who appreciated loyalty and honesty. And Kara? Kara disappeared. Some people said she moved to California. Others heard she was working as a waitress in Florida. A few claimed she'd moved back in with her parents in Ohio. I didn't know, and I didn't ask. She was no longer my problem. The construction business thrived. Word got around that I was a man who stood up for himself, who didn't tolerate betrayal, who understood that actions had consequences. I started getting calls from other men whose wives had cheated, asking for advice on how to handle the situation. Make sure you have evidence, I'd tell them. Make sure you understand the full scope of what they've done, and make sure that when you act decisively. Half measures just give them time to hurt you worse. 6 months after that night at Flanagan's pub, I was having coffee at Mickey's diner when Sally the waitress brought me a newspaper clipping. "Thought you might want to see this," she said. It was a small item from a Florida newspaper. Local woman arrested for credit card fraud. The mugshot showed a woman who looked like Kara, but older, harder, more desperate. "Looks like some people never learn," Sally said. "Some people can't learn," I replied. "They're so used to taking shortcuts and hurting other people that they don't know how to live honestly." I folded the clipping and put it in my wallet, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. A reminder that the night Kara put on that see-through dress and planned to betray me was the night she chose her own destruction. The night the dress stayed home was the night Kara lost everything, and I made damn sure she never forgot it.